All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to do something pretty incredible. We're shrinking ourselves down to a microscopic scale to take a grand tour of the thing that makes up you, me, and literally every living creature on Earth, the cell.
So let me just start by asking you, what are you really made of? I mean, yeah, skin, bones, all that stuff, but what's underneath it all? What are the tiny bustling cities that are constantly working to make you, well, you? The answer, of course, is the cell. And understanding it is really understanding the secret to life itself.
So here's our roadmap for the tour. First, we'll cover the big, foundational idea. Then we'll check out the two main designs life uses for cells. After that, we'll actually cross the cell's borders, explore the factory floor inside, and finish up at the central command center. You ready? Let's go.
Okay, let's dive right into our first stop. This is the foundational idea, the one that underpins, well, pretty much all of modern biology. This theory completely changed the game.
It's called cell theory, and thanks to some brilliant minds like Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow, it boils down to three core ideas. 1, if it's alive, it's made of cells. Simple enough. 2, the cell is the most basic unit you can have that's still considered alive. And 3, and this was the really revolutionary part, every single cell comes from another cell that was already there. This completely shattered the old idea of spontaneous generation. You know, the belief that life could just pop into existence from nothing. It was a massive shift in how we understood life itself. Okay, so now that we're all on the same page about what a cell is, let's look at the two major architectural blueprints life has come up with. You can kind of think of them as a simple, efficient tiny home versus a massive, complex mansion. On the left, you've got your prokaryotic cell. That's the tiny home. It's super simple. Its DNA is just kind of floating around in an area called the nucleoid, and it doesn't have any of those fancy walled-off internal rooms. But on the right, you have the eukaryotic cell. This is the mansion. It has a proper membrane-bound nucleus to protect its DNA, and it's jam-packed with all these specialized compartments called organelles. And it's one of these mansions we're about to tour right now. Now, even within the mansion category, you've got different models. Just look at plant versus animal cells. They've got some pretty key differences, and it all comes down to their lifestyle. A plant needs to be stiff and make its own food, right? So it gets a tough, rigid cell wall and things called plastids for photosynthesis. An animal, on the other hand, needs to be flexible and move around, so it ditches the wall, but has these little structures called centrioles that are super important for when the cell divides. See, each cell is perfectly designed for the job it has to do. All right, let's officially start our tour of an animal cell. Just like any great city, a cell has its own defenses, its own gates to control what comes in and what goes out, and we're starting right at the edge.
Now, if this was a plant cell, the first thing we'd hit would be that super tough cell wall, kind of like a big fortress wall. But we're touring an animal cell, so we get to go straight to the cell membrane. Think of this as the city's highly intelligent bouncer or gatekeeper. It's semi-permeable, which is a fancy way of saying it's incredibly picky about who gets an all-access pass and who gets kicked to the curb.
We're in! Welcome to the cytoplasm. Now, this isn't just some empty goo. This is the factory floor of the cell. It's this bustling, chaotic-looking place where all the real work of life actually gets done. So let's check out the main production line.
This right here is a perfect look at the cell's incredible teamwork. It's basically a complete manufacturing and shipping operation. It all starts at the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. The rough ER is covered in these little workers that build proteins, while the smooth ER is where fats and lipids get made. Then, all those freshly made goods get sent over to the Golgi bodies. That's the cell's post office, where they get sorted, tagged, and packaged. Finally, they're either shipped out, or if they're waste products, they get sent over to the lysosomes, which are the cell's super efficient recycling centers. Of course, none of this, not the manufacturing, not the shipping, none of it, could ever happen without energy. A factory needs power to run, right? Well, for that, the cell has a very famous dedicated power plant. And here it is, the one you've definitely heard of, the mitochondria. You know it as the powerhouse of the cell, and for good reason. Its entire job is to take the food the cell absorbs and convert it into a special energy molecule called ATP. ATP is the universal energy currency for pretty much all life on Earth. It fuels every single thing the cell does. And here's a crazy little fact for you. Mitochondria actually have their own separate DNA, which points to their ancient past as free-living organisms. No mitochondria, no power. It is truly that simple. Oh, and we can't just forget the actual workers on the factory floor, can we? These little guys are the ribosomes. They are the actual protein-building machines.
You'll find these essential little structures in all cells, both the simple prokaryotes and the complex eukaryotes like ours. They're either floating around freely in the cytoplasm or attached to the rough ER, just constantly churning out all the proteins that make everything else possible.
So, we've seen the factory floor, and we've visited the power plant. We've now reached our final destination on this tour, the most important, most protected, most critical room in the entire cellular city.
We are now standing at the nucleus. And this isn't just another organelle on the tour. No way. This is the command center. It's the city hall. It's the master library. It holds the most precious thing the cell has, the blueprint for the entire organism, the DNA. And as you can see, its entire structure is built around protection and control. It's surrounded by a double membrane with these little guarded pores that act like checkpoints, regulating everything that comes in and out. Inside, you see the chromatin, which is that jumble of DNA wrapped around proteins that holds the genetic code. And right there in the center, that dense spot, that's the nucleolus. That's the special district where those protein factories we just talked about, the ribosomes, are first assembled.
So let's do a quick recap of our grand tour. We started with cell theory, the bedrock of biology. We learned about the two main blueprints, the simple prokaryotes and the complex eukaryotes. We saw how plants and animals have different designs for different jobs. Then we went inside and saw how the ER, Golgi, and mitochondria all work together like a well-oiled machine. And we finished in the nucleus, the ultimate control center holding the DNA. It's just an incredible coordinated masterpiece, isn't it?
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. Our bodies contain trillions of these cells, and they are performing all of these complex, perfect tasks every single second of our lives. So, what happens when just one small part of this incredibly intricate system, one little pathway, one single organelle, starts to fail? Well, that's where the story of health and disease really begins.